We are joined here today by Stani Kulechov, the founder of Aave Labs. He founded ETHLend in 2017, which is one of the first decentralized lending protocols on Ethereum, and later launched Aave in 2020. And it's now the world's largest DeFi lending market with over $64 billion in deposits across 14 networks. He's also the founder of Aave Labs, like I mentioned, and is the team behind key innovations like the upcoming Aave 4 upgrade, Go, Aave's decentralized stablecoin, and Aave Horizon, which we will talk about as well, and has attracted more than $500 million in assets in the past 2 months alone. That's a lot to say. Stani, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us on Crypto in America.
Thanks for having me.
We always like to start by asking our guests, can you tell us what Crypto in America means to you?
I think it means an opportunity in the sense that, opportunity to build and use a technology that will empower a lot of people, not just in the US, but globally. And the best place to build it is obviously here. There's a lot of talent, and regulatory landscape is better now than it used to be 1 year ago. And I think that's why also as a team, we started in Europe, but we have a presence here in New York since 2021. And we believe that, technology can be built from here and also can empower a lot of Americans in the future, and bringing just better, more cost-efficient financial opportunities and transparent markets.
So, Stani, I want to ask you, we're here at SmartCon. The suits, I think, are here. There's obviously a deep alignment with traditional finance. I think the last time I saw you was ETH Dublin, notably fewer suits out there. And I'm curious.
It was a hackathon, I think, right?
Right. Yeah.
So a developer audience.
Few more.
Hopefully no suits, yeah.
Yeah. But so the question I want to ask is, you guys work very closely with Chainlink on price feeds, and there's been this big notion of, with regulatory clarity comes institutional interest and adoption. What has it been like to see more traditional financial players enter the DeFi space, and how do you guys think about that at Aave?
Yeah, I think it's a really net positive, especially that's with tokenized assets that is getting a lot of attention. And DeFi is really important for institutions and tokenized assets, because that provides the ability to create utility for tokenization. Because once you tokenize, it doesn't really help if you don't have any sort of use case afterwards. It's just basically the same old on chain. So from that perspective, that's been really interesting. But one important piece has been education, and being able to educate institutions of the benefits of DeFi and how to do it in the right way. For example, why fully kind of like gated system won't be the same, and how do you reach liquidity network effects, and there's different layers of DeFi. So I think institutions want to start depending on their scale and size from different points of view. I think fintechs are the most kind of eager to understand DeFi and figure that out as a kind of like a yield source for their products, especially in an environment where interest rates are going to go down, and they need to figure out retention for their platforms. But also banks are thinking about a lot about tokenization, how that fits into DeFi down the line, and Aave Horizon is kind of a way to actually capitalize on tokenized assets and provide utility for every asset issuer, and that's why it's so valuable infrastructure for banks and institutions.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned institutions looking to understand DeFi more. Another section of the world that's also looking to understand DeFi more is Washington, and we know you've been there recently, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I think. But I did want to ask you, Aave helped launch a new initiative today called the Ethereum Protocol Advocacy Alliance, which is a new advocacy group focused on shaping DeFi policy specifically around Ethereum matters. Some might say you guys are a little late to the game compared to some other advocacy groups who have been around Washington, D.C. now, for months, sometimes years, when it comes to, advocating for crypto policy, when it comes to, putting a stamp, I would say, on, these bills and these matters before lawmakers in Washington. Why did you think now was the right time to get involved and to send your troops to Washington, as it were?
Well, one thing I need to correct is that's not true.
Oh.
We've been doing it for quite a while.
Okay. But the initiative is new.
Initiative is new,
Okay.
and it's just expansion of what we're doing now. And,
Okay.
In the past, we were the first DeFi team that was doing policy in DC in 2020, 2021. in Europe and in the UK. We stopped doing that after FTX because no one really wanted to talk to us.
Fair.
DeFi is few steps further from like what centralized exchanges and is other kind of more closer to the at that time existing user bases were. So I think what's different from now and then is that now actually we have interesting legislations coming in. So we had the Genius Act that has been really important for embracing stablecoins and creating regulatory clarity there. We have the Clarity Act as well of creating market structures for crypto assets. And I think kind of like now it's the time to double down on these initiatives and ensure that basically DeFi is protected and it's not treated as some sort of a kind of like a like a centralized business model or DeFi basically is a technology as Bitcoin and Ethereum. It doesn't have true DeFi doesn't have like a centralized issuer. So it's important not to regulate the technology, but regulate the edges of the technology, which is the financial service providers. And that's what the market structure bill is trying to do. So to your point, we're trying to now just raise awareness and double down on policy and be more active. And I think it's a really thankless job. I mean, I will spend more time on the product work and meeting institutions and future partners. But at the same time, I think having the right policy for DeFi can actually break it or make it for the whole industry.
But just to be clear, this is a new group focused on Ethereum matters.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's also because Aave was kind of like born and raised on Ethereum.
Yeah, understood.
When it comes to DeFi adoption in America, Stani, I know you travel a lot for work and you probably see a lot of regional differences. How do you kind of differentiate what the opportunity is stateside compared to, maybe APAC, Europe, Latam, and other areas?
I think kind of like APAC was a bit of a leader in when it comes to kind of a regulation or clarity. I think Hong Kong was really interesting venue, for example, a year ago, and they launched one of the first Ethereum ETFs. And obviously, with the difference with the changes of the administration, I think US kind of like took a much bigger leapfrog in the policy side. And obviously, in Europe, you have MiCA regulation, which has been already set and creates a lot of clarity. So there's already like a lot of advances there. But I feel kind of like US is the place to actually set the whole kind of grounds globally, and it matters still globally. And there's still a lot of jurisdictions that don't have any sort of crypto regulation, and I think what we set here, the policies and regulations will affect the whole globally. My kind of like important job is to ensure that DeFi is protected and all these the access to these financial opportunities and providing the transparency is protected because we have to ensure that we're able to embrace the technology and regulation is key part of that. So right type of regulation actually embraces the technology and creates innovation, creates a lot of great companies, creates jobs, reduces cost of operations, and scales the usage. Wrong type of a regulation then on the other hand can kill the whole space, increase the cost for the users, institutions, and get us back to the same old.
Bitcoin might sound complicated, but the Gemini credit card makes it simple. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. No annual fee, and right now you can grab a $200 Bitcoin intro bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stash. Go to gemini.com/CIA to learn more. Terms apply.
Stani, I want to ask you about there's the technology and then there's the people, right? And so there's been some concern among folks in the US that we're not necessarily protecting the right people building these protocols. Someone else who grew up in Ethereum, Roman Storm, is obviously on trial right now as a developer. What have your conversations been like on the Hill in terms of just educating folks about protecting developers themselves who are writing this code?
Yeah, I think that's a really important topic. It goes back to the old discussion of protecting open source, protecting cryptography, even like decades ago. And I think it's a really valuable and important kind of topic and point you always raise, is that essentially like there's freedom of expression of in the form of code, as an example, and that's something that should be protected, and especially because a lot of the developers in the space are building open source systems that simply benefits everyone. And I think that protection for developers is really important for just for the safety, and also for introducing more opportunities. So developers won't come and build if they don't feel comfortable of doing so. So they won't innovate, and actually it can lead into even a worse outcome where these developers will have to operate anonymously. There's a reason why Satoshi was anonymous and created Bitcoin, right? So there's certain risk involved, but if we can mitigate those risks and enable full innovation and being able to take these opportunities as a developer or a team based in US, that will create a lot of innovation. And stablecoins are really great. We see a lot of stablecoin startup now with Genius Act, and it's a great way of showing how you can actually export the US economy, and also even for institutions, how they can actually keep the users in their network even if the funds are flowing out of the institution. So it's a really, really important topic that touches innovation and the growth of the whole industry.
Yeah. Do you get the sense that they're understanding DeFi? I know from your conversations that you've had, I know you were at the SEC, you spoke with Hester Peirce, you were at the Fed as well. Do you get the sense that they're kind of coming around to this new technology? And are you optimistic when you walked away from those meetings that the industry is going to be okay, at least the DeFi side of the industry?
Yes and no. I would say that those who work closely with the industry, crypto in general, decentralized finance and stablecoins, they do have a good understanding of DeFi, the peculiarities of the technology. Obviously, the other stakeholders who are not necessarily involved on the day-to-day or in any kind of have any connection from their work perspective, and their in that sense, there's a quite high educational gap that we have to reach. And I think that education is really key on how we get policymakers on the same table and actually agree what to do on DeFi side and crypto in general. So I think there's still a lot of education, and the good thing is actually there's a lot of people that are going to DC and actually educating a lot of policymakers. So I'm doing this thankless job, but there's actually people who are doing it on a day-to-day basis, and I think that's what will help to have the right type of a policy.
Yeah, I kind of want to move on from government talks, Dani, and get your take on the DeFi side of things with tokenization, stablecoins. You brought up stablecoins before, so we're going to pull that back in. I know Aave has Go, which is its decentralized stablecoin, right? How do you kind of think about the way Aave can collaborate with institutions in the US, fintechs, and so on with, stablecoins in mind, but then also like the whole DeFi infrastructure? What would that really look like to you?
Yeah, I think the same way we're using the Aave protocol into these kind of like a native crypto assets, the protocol works really well. At peak, we have 60, 75 billion worth of net deposits, and out of that, we have 16, 17 billion in stablecoins. So it's very stablecoin centric in business. But what's interesting is that the whole protocol is very resilient. So we had the Black Friday, and
Gerald wanted to ask about that. That's why he's nodding. Yeah.
Well, we have Black Friday, and then we're also, I think it was 1.7 billion in liquidations over the last like 24 hours or something as well.
Oh yeah.
Early November is when we're recording this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of volatility in the space. There's also a lot of kind of like flushing, a lot of leverage as well, and the protocol liquidated automatically over 200 million worth of collateral in a decentralized way in a highly competitive environment. It just showcases that DeFi is resilient, and that resiliency is what eventually ensures that DeFi will win. And then we just take that protocol that works really well, is battle tested, has been operating for years, and apply into these traditional assets. So we start to actually use tokenized assets as a collateral and borrowing stablecoins. So that's what we're doing with the Aave Horizon. Reached over $500 million market size in a couple of months, using tokenized funds, tokenized money market funds, tokenized credit funds, and in the future tokenized equities, ETFs, credits, and just bringing these traditional assets on chain and providing access to 24/7 liquidity. And the key here is that if we can do our jobs better in terms of cost perspective than the traditional financial systems running on these kind of like existing technology, that is where kind of like the cost savings will come. When you have to have less people to operate these businesses, you can rely on smart contracts and automatization. That is where you start actually winning a lot of institutions, because you're winning on the pricing, you're winning on the opportunity, because at that point it's also cheaper to source credit. The pricing is going to be more accurate because you have more visibility on risk. Everyone can make better decisions on these financial opportunities. And I think that's creates this kind of like a domino effect, that after one institution and another one is starting to plug into not just DeFi but on chain and moving assets onto the blockchain, we start to actually see a really big snowball effect.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question on that? Because the notion of smaller teams doing more, I think, is very, very true in DeFi, right? Like Hyperliquid has, the highest profit per employee, in the history of companies. But at the same time, a lot of these traditional financial institutions, you could just call them compliance departments who occasionally do financial transactions. How do you see those two worlds meeting, where it's like the devs running around doing things and all the checks and balances that are involved in large institutions?
Yeah, I think it's also a question of time. DeFi is great because you can start with a team of 5 people, and you can, build systems that scale to billions of people. But over time, you will have more people. So Aave has been around for 7 years. So we started with 5 people, and then we had 10, and now we have 90 people in the team, and we're very developer centric. But at the same time, we do have a compliance department, we have a legal team, we have a lot of functions that are outside of the kind of like a smart contract realm, and also business development team that works with a lot of these institutions and partners. So there's a lot of that goes outside of the smart contract realm and touches, for example, compliance points. So as DeFi matures, these teams will grow, but they will be significant smaller by order of magnitude compared to the banks and fintechs as well.
You guys recently announced what I thought was super interesting, a $50 million token buyback. That kind of reminds me of like a share buyback, right? That you'd see in like a traditional public company. I mean, you just told me all the things that you guys are doing, which kind of sounds like, things that a traditional company does. Do you see DeFi protocols kind of evolving to become more like traditional companies, as they mature?
Well, the thing is that DeFi protocols will never be companies because they're essentially networks, but they can grow to plug into all these systems. And maybe something that is very comparable will be like Visa or MasterCard as a network, essentially. But then at the same time, you can actually build a really good companies on top of the DeFi infrastructure by relying on DeFi. And what it means is that you can effectively use on-chain by reducing the operational expenses and operate in a smaller team by focusing purely on distribution and creating interesting financial products. So I think that will be an interesting involvement.
Last major thing for me, Stani, I want to know, as DeFi kind of comes into America, I think there's like 2 separate roads, and maybe this is watering it down beyond belief, but we've got institutions, right? They could adopt this technology and improve the rails. And then there's the other side where it's like you could start providing things that were previously private in capital markets to the broader market. What excites you more between the 2 roads?
I think bringing access, is Aave has always, even from the ETHLend days, it's been always about access. And I mean, our first slogan was like democratizing access to finance, and that's a really great example where you can take an asset that maybe is accessible by high net worths and being able to tokenize that and giving that access to the global population. But also, like, even the access to dollar yield, as simple as it sounds, is a big opportunity at the moment, and especially when the rates in traditional finance are going to go down, in the next 18 months, DeFi is starting to become really appealing to also the fintechs as a distributors and at a global scale.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Stani, thank you for joining us today on stage at SmartCon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.